Welcome our blood viewers to RCT's News English edition. As usual, we begin tonight's news with the major and top highlights. Holding of the first public session of the first ordinary session of the Parliament National Assembly, 9th Legislature. And on international scene, Cyclone Freddy again affects Mozambique. Those were the major and top highlights. Welcome back to our newsroom, our beloved viewers. The National Assembly proceeded this Sunday, March 12th, to the establishment of the statutory permanent bodies that compose it and which are enriched in the stipulations of the internal regulations, particularly in application of Articles 5, 15, and 22, and in accordance with the Titles 4 and 5 of the Constitution. Let's follow.
The National Assembly has proceeded today to the establishment of the statutory permanent bodies that compose it and that are included in the stipulations of the provisions of the internal regulation, in particular in application of Article 5, 15, and 22, and in accordance with the Title 4 and 5 of the Constitution, intervening 1 week after the convocation of the session of admission of the members of the 9th legislature and the elections of the Bureau of the National Assembly. Today's plenary, led by the President of the Parliament, His Excellency Dileita Mohamed Dileita, was about the High Court of Justice and the establishment of committee. After remanding the fundamental provisions regulating such a session, the hemicycle has, through the course of its activity, exchanged and deliberated on the compositions of the members and the Bureau of High Court of Justice, and then the permanent commission's essential components of the legitimacy, the parliamentary rhythm. At the end of the agenda of this first public session, symbolizing the final phase of the launch of the 9th legislature, the President of the National Assembly addressed a few concluding words to his peers.
The President of the National Assembly, Mr. Dileita Mohamed Dileita, made a speech on the issues of the agenda.
Proposé Mr. Ali Abdi Farah, Ugur Kifli Ahmed, Madame Elia Ismail Gedi, Abdurrahman Mohamed Alali, Omar Ahmed Bouis, Abdi Kari Bouh, Madame Safia Elmi Jibril, Ibrahim Ahmed Abdou et Abdallah Barakat Ibrahim. Je voudrais vous demander, avant de poursuivre la réunion, qui est pour? Levez les mains. Merci. Qui est contre? Qui s'abstient? La proposition est adoptée.
During the first session, the President of the National Assembly, Mr. Dileita, made a proposal to elect the members who will constitute the office of the High Court of Justice in the Parliament. Then the proposal of the President of the National Assembly, Mr. Dileita, was unanimously approved by all the parliamentarians of the hemicycle. Finally, the members of the office of the High Court of Justice who were elected were sworn in before the members of the National Assembly to carry out their function. The 9 members of the High Court of Justice of the National Assembly are علي عبدي فرح، أجور خفيلي أحمد، إلايا إسماعيل جيدي، عبد الرحمن محمد علالي، عمر أحمد وعيس، عبدي خيري بوح، صفية علمي جبريل، إبراهيم أحمد عبدو and Abdullah Barkhad Ibrahim. By all the parliamentarians of the hemicycle. The messages of congratulations to the new President of the National Assembly continue to flow to RTD. This time, a message from the Director of Al-Rahma, Mr. Abdul Ghani Al-Quraishi, addressed to His Excellency the Laita Mohammed Laita regarding his election as head of the National Assembly. Also, the President of the Parliament of Yemen, Al-Sheikh Sultan Al-Balkani, addresses a message of congratulations to His Excellency the Laita Mohammed Laita, the head of the National Assembly, and wishes to strengthen the relations between the two brotherly countries, Yemen and Djibouti. Still on the national scene, the Hotel Kempinski hosted this morning the closing of the expert meeting on the finalization of the report on governments in Africa 2023. The meeting was chaired by Ambassador Musa Mohammed Umar, representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and APRM focal point, and was attended by the representative of the Said Department, Continental Secretary Mr. Batuloka Mokong, Mrs. Hob Tumukonde, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Rwanda, Mrs. Lindwini Kwamalo, chairperson of the AGA platform, as well as member of representatives of APRM member countries. During the two-day meeting, the experts finalized the consolidated version of the report on governance in Africa, incorporating the recommendations and observations of the African Union member states meeting at the 36th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government on 18 and 19 February 2023 in Addis Ababa. The main objective of this finalization process is therefore to ensure that the consolidated version of the APRM 2023 reflects the recommendations made by member states and that any proposed recommendations do not contradict the AU's values and legal framework. Ambassador Musa Mohammed Umar, representative of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, focal point of the APRM, took this opportunity to express his sincere gratitude to the Continental Secretary of IPM for having chosen Djibouti to host for the second time in the space of 2 months the work of the review of the 2023 report on governance in Africa, whose theme is unconstitutional change. Shifting gears to sports, now the third edition of the Regional Senior Table Tennis Championship extinguished its lanterns on a festive and colorful note in the evening of Saturday, yesterday, during a spotless gala dinner offered by the Secretary of State in charge of sports, His Excellency Mr. Hassan Mohammed Kamil, at the edge of the pool of Sheraton Hotel. Let's follow.
First editions of the Regional Senior Table Tennis Championship extinguished its lanterns on a festive and colorful note in the evening yesterday during a sumptuous gala dinner offered by the Secretary of State in charge of sports, His Excellency Hassan Mohammed Kamil, at the pool of Sheraton Hotel. A dinner which took, in addition to the Secretary of State for Sports, the Minister of Trade and Tourism, the President of the Djibouti Table Tennis Federation, the President of the East African Table Tennis Zone, several personalities of the sport world, as well as all the delegation participating in this third edition. It was a good opportunity for the Secretary General and her collaborators to make the 3 days of intense and rich activities that brought together the cream of the regions in table tennis. She said all in all, the organizers were satisfied with the enthusiasm that this third editions of the championship has aroused both from the federations as well as the public. Let us note that several distinctions to the participating countries were awarded during this dinner gala. Then once the meals was over and the last appearance of the few speakers, the transition with the DJ Hakim was quite natural for a wild end of the evening on the dance floor.
In her speech, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Sports, Mrs. Khadija Ibrahim, thanked all those who contributed to the success of this great event and the great dinner gala. Now we follow the impressions of the participants in the dinner that was organized in honor of all the participants in the table tennis tournament.
I think I've had mixed emotions over the period. It's been competitive, it's been fun. I like the Djibouti culture. I think people are very welcoming. So generally, I love the feeling. I love to be here. Yeah. There are very many top players here. I think the turnout here was great compared to in 2020 when there was a similar tournament in Uganda. Many countries have come here. A lot of good players who play abroad are here. So the competition was definitely tough. That is what matters to me.
This is Job Sisai. I am from Ethiopia. I represent Ethiopian table tennis and we are here in Djibouti and we are in the second place. We qualified for the Tunisian African Championship in table tennis. So everything is so far so good. It's so good. We are in Djibouti. We are brothers. We were in same country. It's very good. It's very hot, but it's
The People's Palace hosted this morning a national workshop to validate the feasibility study report of the future National Center for Emergency Response to Marine Pollution in Djibouti. Killing two birds with one stone, it was also the ultimate opportunity for training on marine oil spills. This workshop, which will last until the 16th of March, brought together all the executives of the Ministry of the Environment, but also the top of the basket of the Ministry of Equipment, Coast Guards of the National Navy, and those of Directors of Maritime Affairs. Indeed, the National Center for Emergency Response to Marine Pollution will be a cornerstone of the national policy against marine pollution. The aim of the second training course was to acquire and demonstrate a level of competence and understanding on the process of alteration of the marine environment to implement an effective cleaning the coastline using different intervention techniques to select the appropriate equipment and to participate in the intervention teams in case of an oil spill on site. Shifting gears now, the Police Academy Idris Farah Abani, located in Nagat, hosted today the closing ceremony of theoretical and practical training of law enforcement provided to officers of the Coast Guard. This ceremony was attended by Colonel Wa'is Umar Boghore, Commander of the Coast Guard, the Director of Public Security of National Police, Colonel Umar Hassan, and the Director of the Police Academy of Nagat, Lieutenant Colonel Umar Yusuf Umar. For a period of 3 months, the Coast Guard officers were trained on several aspects such as crowd management, the use of weapons in maintaining order, the liberation of public buildings sometimes accompanied by hostage taking, or the removal of barricades. This training aimed at preparing the Coast Guard to these different situations in order to face them with professionalism and efficiency. The ceremony started with the demonstration of the acquired skills trained at the academy by officers of the National Police. The Coast Guard were keen to demonstrate the practices of maintaining order during a hostile demonstration. After the demonstration of achievements, the Director of the Police Academy, Lieutenant Colonel Umar Yusuf Umar, led the officials in the amphitheater of APIFA for the presentation of certificates of completion of training. In his speech, the Director of the Academy made a brief presentation on the theoretical and practical training offered by officers of the National Police of the Coast Guard officers. Thereafter, the ceremony continued with the presentation of the diplomas to the Coast Guard officers and the exchange of gifts.
beledkeenan hodanka ah barbarada ka jooge halkii looga baahdiyo bartacadu ku dhuuntaba bayda u dhigaye u badheedhayaanahay baalaha xuduudiyo bartamaha magaalada baalaha xuduudiyo bartamaha magaalada عدو بهوشة وقالو وابكسانايه إننا عبقويان وطبابارانا هاي بالاها حدوديو برتمها مقالدا بالاها حدوديو برتمها مقالدا.
In the series of official speeches, the Commander of the Coast Guard, Colonel Wa'is Umar Boghore, thanked the National Police for this collaboration and recalled the need for this training in law enforcement more often. The Director of Public Security of the National Police, Colonel Umar Hassan, who closed the series of speeches, congratulated the Coast Guard officers for their diligence and seriousness during this training. Yesterday, the Ministry of Youth and Culture organized an afternoon of discovery on board the Logos Hope, the largest floating library in Djibouti for dozens of young people. It is with the objective of sharing the treasures of the Logos Hope that these young people coming from several community development centers were invited on board. They were able to discover the bookstore, make purchases, and meet the crew composed of over 60 nationalities from around the world. A true floating architecture, Logos Hope is 132 meters long, has 9 decks, and can accommodate up to 10,000 people, but no more travelers since its purchase and rehabilitation by the German NGO in 2024. The building has become the largest bookstore in the world with the mission of bringing books to places where are they to succor. Shifting gears towards the international scene now, rains and strong winds swept through several provinces in central Mozambique on Saturday. More details with Mohammed Aden.
National heavy rains and winds swept through several provinces in central Mozambique on Saturday as Cyclone Freddy made its second landfall in 2 weeks, authorities and aid agencies said. Satellite images show that Freddy, on track to become the longest tropical cyclone on record, made another landfall near the port city of Keliman. Authorities warned Friday that more than half a million people were at the risks of devastating rains of up to 400 millimeters are expected in the next.
More than 1,300 migrants were rescued Saturday by the Italian Coast Guard and Navy from overcrowded boats in trouble in the central Mediterranean. Mohammed Aden again with the details.
Overcrowded ships in the Mediterranean, hundreds of migrants rescued by Italian Coast Guard. More than 1,300 migrants were rescued Saturday by the Italian Coast Guard and Navy while on board overcrowded boat in the central Mediterranean. On board overcrowded, the rescue services announced the Italian Coast Guard and Navy had dispatched several ships on Friday to help 3 boats carrying several hundred migrants and spotted in the central Mediterranean, one of the most dangerous migration routes in the world. On Saturday, 487 migrants were brought back safely to the port of Croton. The rescue services said from video released by the Coast Guard on Friday showed some of them on the deck of a large fishing boat pitching in a raw sea. The operation is come less than 2 weeks after a deadly shipwreck of the Coast Guard of the southern Italy that killed 62 people, including several children.
Well, by this, our vlog viewers, we finally conclude this edition. Thank you for being with us and make sure to tune in later for more. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.